Hello and welcome to whatever this is, and I am your host, Panyo Basa, also known as David Reynolds. I suppose the alias would be Panyo Basa since David Reynolds is on my official ID. But I have been asked to talk about the Noble Eightfold Path, and I'm sure the person who asked in all good faith and everything, not knowing that I was probably going to be throwing curveballs and knuckleballs and so forth in my explanation. But to some degree, um, that's what's going to happen because I don't just talk about the dogma aspect of it. I could just tell you exactly what the Buddhist books say. The Noble Eightfold Path is this, and it's going to be mostly that. But um, with regard to the Noble Eightfold Path, like if you really investigate the oldest text, you want to know what the Buddha really taught about the fourth noble truth, which is the Eightfold Path, or just the path, the Magga Sacha. Then yeah, there is some evidence that originally the path was not eightfold. In fact, there are a few cases in the suttas, like old suttas, where it's a tenfold path with, I think, right liberation is towards the end. I can't remember what the ninth one was, right insight or something like that. It's relatively obscure. Most people aren't really familiar with it. But I'm going to be telling you, um, yeah, the Eightfold Path is like orthodox. It's standard. It has been orthodox and standard almost from the very beginning. It's like any literate Buddhist, any Buddhist who really wants to consider themselves more or less educated or knowledgeable with regard to their own religious system should know the Eightfold Path. So that's what I'm going to tell you about. But before I get to that, I suppose I should tell you about the first three Noble Truths before I get to the fourth one. And I did a video recently. One of the last videos I did was about dukkha, which is like the first noble truth, dukkha sacha. So that is the first noble truth of the four noble truths, which the Buddha, um, according to tradition, he started Buddhism going by teaching about the four noble truths and the middle path and a few other things. So the Four Noble Truths are contained in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, which is considered to be his first sermon after he became ordained. So the first noble truth is dukkha, which is to exist is to suffer. To exist is never to be fully satisfied. That you're never going to be completely satisfied so long as you exist anywhere. So long as you exist, even the highest heaven realms are not entirely satisfactory. And um, I could get into that, but since I was asked specifically about the Eightfold Path, I will just point out that one reason why to exist is to suffer is because it takes a kind of restless dissatisfaction to keep pushing us forwards through time. And I'll let you chew on that a little bit and move on to the second noble truth, which is um, how should I say it? That all suffering is caused by craving, or in Pali it's tatna, which literally means thirst. So the first noble truth is that if you exist, you are going to suffer sometimes, that you're never going to be entirely free of at least vague dissatisfaction. The second noble truth is that this suffering, this dukkha, is caused by craving or desire. And the third noble truth is just a logical consequence of the second noble truth, which is if suffering is caused by desire, then if you eliminate the desire, you eliminate the suffering. So that's Nirodha Satcha. First noble truth is Dukkha Satcha, the truth of dukkha or suffering. Second noble truth is Samudaya Satcha, or the truth of the arising or the origin of suffering, which is desire. And then the third noble truth is Nirodha Satcha, the truth of cessation, which is the cessation of desire results in the cessation of suffering. And then finally, you have Magga Satcha, which is the main point of this video, and that is the path leading to the cessation of suffering. Magga Satcha, or the truth of the path. And as I said at the beginning, traditionally the path is eightfold. And I will rely on my memory here to go through the list of 8. And I'll just go through the list first, and then we can go back and kind of cover each one. So first you've got right view, or samadhi. Second, you've got right thought or right attitude, which is sammasankappa. Third, you've got right speech, sammavaca. Fourth, you've got right action, or sammakamanta. Then fifth, you've got right livelihood, samma-ajiva. Sixth is right effort, samma-vayama. Seventh is right mindfulness, or samma-sati. And finally, eighth is right concentration, or samma-samadhi. And in some of the suttas, the first 7 are just leading up to samma-samadhi, because Buddhism was originally a contemplative monastic school or sect or tradition, and really it very heavily emphasized the cultivation of very subtle contemplative or meditative states. And that was considered to be the gateway to enlightenment. Like 4th jhana, the highest contemplative state in the older systems, that was just like the jumping off point to enlightenment in a sense. But let's just go back to number 1. So samadhi, right view. That's a tricky one, especially for me, because ultimately you have to let go of all views. Some of the oldest texts warn against having any view, clinging to any view. Any kind of clinging, any kind of attachment is keeping you unenlightened. And so even like Ajahn Chah used to say, even right view becomes wrong view if you cling to it. And so samadhi, it's like the beginning. It's like how you start. It's just like the starting point. And from the Buddhist point of view, it includes a few things, like especially karma. If you can accept the doctrine of karma, which is really that what you do has consequences, and there's a certain metaphysical aspect to that, certainly a psychological aspect. In fact, Buddhist ethics are based on psychology, that right and wrong are not the result of a decree or like cultural standards or anything like that. Right and wrong depend upon the effect of an action upon your own mind and your own volitions for doing that behavior in the first place. That really volition is karma. It's one of the most profound and important and unrecognized and misunderstood aspects of Buddhism. And there's quite a few misunderstood aspects of Buddhism, but the very idea that karma is essentially the momentum of your mind. It's like the motive force of your mind that keeps pushing your mind forwards through time. That is karma. And if you develop bad mental states, then your bad mental states are going to cause you to be in a bad world. And if you cultivate good mental states, then those mental states will cause you to be in a better world. Never a perfect one, because of the first noble truth, but still, like, right view, it's sort of like a map. You know, it's like it's not instructions on really how to realize nirvana. It's tricky to explain this, because ultimately you have to let it go. Like, right view is just part of the raft made of sticks and leaves and grass and everything that you use to cross the river. And then once you've crossed the river in the raft made out of essentially junk, you just leave it behind. And right view is like that. It's necessary at first, but at the end, you're not going to cling to any view whatsoever. So right view is just helping you to get started. You know, it's like in order to practice, you have to have a reason to practice. You have to have an understanding of what practice is. And that's pretty much what right view is. It's like having a map. So after that comes sammasankappa, which is right thought or right attitude. And there's a number of different interpretations of that. And I used to go with right attitude. I like that. I think Venerable Jnanavira translated it that way, and I like that until finally I read somewhere else, and this made a lot of sense, that numbers 2, 3, and 4, Sama Sankappa, Sama Vacha, and Sama Kamanda, are really just the standard Buddhist division of behavior into mental, verbal, and physical. So probably, in my opinion anyway, Sama Sankappa, or right thought, is really right mental action. It's like morality or virtue in your thoughts. Like not harboring ill will, not harboring hatred and resentment and desire for revenge and that sort of thing. And then the second would be right speech, which is right verbal action. And then the third is right sama kamanda, right action, which is right physical action. So, yeah, sama sankappa, it can be interpreted as right aspiration or right attitude, like I said. But yeah, I think mainly just what it means is just sort of morality and restraint in your mental behavior, your mental activity, which then leads to number 3 of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is samavacha, which is right speech. And right speech is divided up into 4 categories traditionally. I mean, most people know that what right speech primarily means is you don't lie. So that's the first kind of wrong speech, is lying, like deliberately trying to deceive somebody. And just because you say something that isn't true doesn't mean that you're lying, so long as you're not trying to deceive anybody. You could just be making an honest mistake. Like a kid who answers a question wrong on his math test at school is not lying because he didn't say the true answer. He just messed up. He didn't get it right. And also, like, if you're joking, or you're not really trying to deceive anybody, then that is not willful lying. So in order to be lying from a Buddhist point of view, you have to have the deliberate intention to lie. And there are sort of subtle borderline cases, like let's say you're trying to lie to somebody and they don't understand English well enough to even understand what you're saying, so they're not deceived, or they don't even understand what you're trying to say, something like that. Then you're still making unskillful karma or unwholesome karma by even trying to deceive somebody. But whether you successfully have lied is questionable. Or there's one that I used to think about sometimes. A lot of you may know that if you're walking down the street and you've got like an angry dog starts barking at you and behaving aggressive, that all you have to do is just reach down like you're going to pick up a rock. You don't even have to pick up the rock, but the dog will clear out because maybe it thinks you're picking up a rock. And I mean, from my point of view, that is a kind of deception. I mean, you deceive that dog into thinking that you've picked up a rock that you're going to throw at him, maybe. But so there's all these different levels of lying, with maybe politicians being up at the very top. But really what it boils down to is your intentions. Like I've already said, that whether what you do is right or wrong depends upon your volition, like your intentions, the mental states that accompany what you are doing, especially like the motive force, the actual mental states that are causing you to perform the action. And with some people, I mean, 2 people can say exactly the same thing. One person is saying something wrong and the other person isn't, just based upon their reasons for saying it. And that might become a little more clear when I get to the other categories of wrong speech. So like I said, the first category of wrong speech is just flat out lying. But there are 3 other ones. The next one is called pisunavacha, which is speaking, it's like bad mouthing somebody behind their back in order to get other people not to like them. And this also has sort of borderline cases, like somebody tells you they're going to buy a car from so-and-so, and you happen to know that so-and-so has this piece of junk car. And maybe you also know that so-and-so is a rascally person that does not flinch at ripping people off. So you could warn your friend, I wouldn't buy the car because I know this guy and he's not honest, or I wouldn't buy the car because I've ridden in that car and it's a piece of junk. It's like, why you say that determines whether what you're saying is wrong speech or not, whether it's pisunavacha or not. If you're doing it just out of friendliness, not wanting to see your friend get ripped off, then you're doing okay. But if you say the exact same words out of like malice towards this other person, like you just don't want him to make any money, maybe the car isn't that much of a piece of junk or whatever. But if you're doing it, if you are motivated by a desire for people not to like this person you're saying the bad stuff about, then that is Pisunavacha. And this kind of wrong speech can be completely truthful. I mean, maybe the person really is dishonest, but if you're going around telling people he's dishonest just to get people not to like him, or to get people to turn against him or not associate with him, that kind of thing, then that is the kind of wrong speech. That would be a violation of the 5 precepts of a lay Buddhist. That would be a grounds for violation of the second precept of not lying. Or did I get that wrong? 4th precept. Sheesh. So anyway, so that's the second kind of wrong speech. Third kind of wrong speech is called Pisunavacha, which is harsh speech, and that's just bad mouthing someone to their face, like cursing somebody, telling them that they're just a no good so and so, this kind of thing. And it's like the purpose is to hurt the other person. The person is your purpose is to like shame or cause suffering in this other person. And again, it could be true. Maybe the person really is a thief or something, and you're just calling them a thief. But you're not calling them a thief for any constructive purpose. You're just like rubbing their nose in it or something. Then yeah, that's a kind of wrong speech too. And this kind of wrong speech, I mean, it's like even some people who consider themselves to be Buddhists, for like political reasons, they'll be bashing somebody, or for political reasons, they'll be trying to get somebody shut down or silenced, or this kind of thing, or they might even be rebuking someone to their face. But it's they might think that they are justified because this other person is so wrong in their political views or whatever. Maybe they've microaggressed somebody. Maybe they've said the word Eskimo in public, and so just trying to get at them, trying to punish them through verbal actions. Unless you've got really positive, you don't have any malice or anger or like desire for vengeance or anything in your heart, and you should investigate your heart very carefully in such cases, then yeah, I mean, if you do that kind of thing, that's wrong speech. It's just as bad as lying from the point of view of Buddhist ethics. And then finally, the 4th category of wrong speech is called sampapalapa, which is just like gossip or just worthless talk, just talk that is of really no benefit to anybody. That after the conversation, nobody is any better off than they were before. There's not even been any real exchange of useful facts. It's just, who's doing who on the soap opera or something like that. Then that also could be considered idle chatter, is often how it's translated. So Samavacha, we're only up to number 3 on the Noble Eightfold Path, but Samavacha is essentially not doing those 4 kinds of wrong speech. And then Samakamanda is mainly keeping the precepts that have to do with physical action. So that's like no killing and no stealing and no sensual misconduct and no indulging in intoxicants which cause cloudedness of mind. So the four precepts that of the 5 that are not with regard to speech. Wrong speech is its own precept to avoid wrong speech. So the other 4 would be right life or right action. And there's always these gray zones. There's always these borderline cases. Like, for example, when I was living in Burma, there were a few times when there would be a certain time of year, like maybe right after the first rains, there'd just be like these little insects just completely covering the ground. Just there, you could not walk without stepping on them. But my purpose was simply to go from point A to point B, and I had to step on them. There's really no way to avoid it. Even if you took one of those soft brooms like the Jains use, these insects they were like little gnats. They were so ephemeral that they'd probably get squished even by a really soft broom. So Since my purpose was not to step on them, I mean, I didn't really take any pleasure in stepping on them. I just had to get from here to there. Then, yeah, um, you're not really um, violating the precept. You know, you're not violating a right action according to the Noble Eightfold Path, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. So again, it really depends on your motivation, and your motivation is your karma. It's like the motive force of your mind is your karma. So, like another one would be stealing. Like if you accidentally take something, you know, it's like there's two bicycles. Both of them look like yours. You don't have your glasses on, or you're just not paying careful attention. So you take off on the wrong bike accidentally, then you haven't really stolen it from the point of view of Buddhist ethics. Or what would be another one? Or you just borrow something and you're fully intending to give it back. You don't think the person would mind, and then even if they do mind, and even if they're saying that you stole it, if you know, I mean, if your intention was not to steal it, you just were borrowing it with the sincere belief that the other person wouldn't mind that you took it, and you were fully intending to give it back, then again, you really haven't stolen anything. I mean, legally you might have. I mean, you could get into legal trouble, but from the point of view of Buddhist ethics, you haven't really made any bad karma through that. Not because of that, anyway. So that would be right action is really just following, you know, the five precepts that apply to physical action, the five precepts that are not the one about lying or wrong speech. So after that comes sama ajiva, which is right livelihood, and even devout Buddhists can break this one, because right livelihood. Maybe I should have studied up on this. As usual, I'm giving this just from the hip. I haven't really studied up on anything, but right livelihood. It has a list. Like traditionally, there is a list of livelihoods or professions or ways of making a living that you avoid. Like obviously, any kind of livelihood that involves killing animals. You know, like working at a slaughterhouse, obviously, unless maybe you're just a secretary or mopping the floors or something. Like being a fisherman, something like that. Even trading in animals for slaughter is forbidden. That would be on the list. Trading in slaves, which would also include like white slavery, you know, like a pimp, something like that. Dealing in intoxicants, and that would include alcohol also. So, technically speaking, like a bartender or a cocktail server, um, they also, or even like this is kind of a difficult one, is like even if you're just a checker at the grocery store, you know, if people are buying beer and wine from you, you know, you're taking their money for the beer and wine, then technically speaking that would be wrong livelihood also. And because it can be damned inconvenient, that even a lot of devout Buddhists will just, you know, they'll just run a restaurant, you know, they'll own their own restaurant, and it's just not good business not to serve alcohol, so they serve alcohol and they just take the hit. I've met quite a few people like that. So nevertheless, it is wrong livelihood. And for a monk, there are certain kinds of wrong livelihood, specifically uh, with regard to monastics, like if they're like teaching dharma for material gain, that kind of thing. You know, they're sort of abusing their position as a monk in order to make a living in certain ways. That would also apply to monks. Any kind of dishonest profession, you know, that would qualify as wrong livelihood, I suppose. Violent or dishonest, that kind of thing. So next comes sama vayama, or right effort. And traditionally, again, there are four right efforts. There's the effort to cultivate new good mental states or new good mental habits. There's the right effort to maintain and improve the good habits you've already got. There's the right effort to eliminate bad habits. And then there's the effort to, let's see, not to acquire new bad habits. So those are the four right efforts. So you're just um, the effort to maintain what good you've already got going, to cultivate new good, to eliminate the bad that you've already got going, and to avoid getting any new bad habits or mental states, any kind of bad qualities. So then, number 7 on the Eightfold Path is right mindfulness, samasati, and that's the 4 foundations of mindfulness, or the 4 applications of mindfulness. And yeah, that could be a video all on its own. But mainly being mindful, as a general rule, is what the Christian contemplative order is called recollection, where essentially you're just being in the present moment. Like if you're reaching for a doorknob, I mean, if you're doing it really mindfully, there'd be like the awareness of the intention to reach for the doorknob, and then you're like you feel your arm moving, and maybe the air against your arm as you're moving your arm and you're reaching, and you can feel like the little stretchy feelings in your arm as you reach for the doorknob, and the little muscles moving to accommodate the knob into your hand. And then when you touch the doorknob, there's like the coolness or the hardness, and then you can feel your hand kind of clenching on the knob, and it's like the softness of your flesh, until it's like the bones underneath kind of press up against it, and then you're the intention to turn the knob and all. I mean, you can go through this elaborate process just for the simplest things, and we're going through those things just mechanically and automatically, which is an aspect of karma. Karma, in a sense, is like an autopilot. It just drives you through when you're not fully conscious. It's just it just kind of takes over. It's just habits. So people have opened doorknobs so many times that they don't really have to think about it, or like driving a car, or for most people signing their name, or all these different things that you would think would take some kind of conscious effort, but really it just takes semi-conscious effort because you've got it like recorded in your brain somewhere. It's just this automatic thing that you do without thinking about it. And yeah, it happens to the best of us. I mean, most people are not fully aware of every action that they take. Like most of you probably have hardly noticed the sensations of your clothing touching your skin, or the air against your skin, or blinking or swallowing your slobber. All of these things, we're doing it all the time, and usually we don't notice because it's just filtered out, and just automatic habits take over, reflexes and habits. And so we're in a way, we're kind of like a robot. We're just like the meat robot that's going around semi-conscious. And Buddhism really teaches how to be awake. I mean, the name, the Buddha means awake. He was someone who woke up. So presumably when he was when he swallowed his slobber, he was aware of swallowing his slobber. When he blinked, he was aware of blinking. Whatever he did it consciously. Whereas most of us, we're not fully conscious. So samasati is making yourself as conscious and as awake and in the present moment as possible. Like Eckhart Tolle says, be here now, or that was Ram Dass that said that. It's just the power of now. Now is all we've got. And in Theravada Buddhism, the past doesn't exist, the present exists, and the future doesn't. So all there really is the present moment. And so if you're not in the present moment fully, then you're just not alive fully. You're not fully conscious. Sometimes you have to think about the future. You got to remember the past sometimes, but still, if you're like grounded in the present moment, it's like, I am here right now, planning for the future. I am here right now, remembering the past. There's still this, you're still grounded in the present moment when you're being fully mindful. So yeah, I'll just pass on from that. There's a lot of things that can be said about mindfulness, and it gets a lot of discussion from Burmese Sayadaws, probably from Thai Ajahns, and also from Western lay teachers. So mindfulness is one of the aspects of the Noble Eightfold Path that you can find just a huge amount of information on. Entire books written about it. So finally, you've got right concentration, or samasamadhi. And it is kind of interesting to me that according to the Mahasatipatthana Sutta, the great discourse on the 4 applications of mindfulness, which is considered to be the Bible for the Vipassana people. The Vipassana meditators, the Vipassana meditation um, tradition in the West. They consider the Mahasatipatthana Sutta to be practically, if there is any scripture that they really like rely on, that's pretty much it. That's like number one for the mindfulness, for the insight people. And according to that text, right concentration is defined as the 4 jhanas. So a lot of people saying jhana isn't necessary. Jhana isn't necessary. It's just like kanika samadhi, just momentary, moment to moment concentration is good enough. But if you read the Bible for the mindfulness people, then the Bible for the mindfulness people say that right concentration is the 4 jhanas. And the 4 jhanas are traditionally considered to be deep enough meditative states that they are essentially superhuman mental states, which is kind of strange to me that right concentration would be defined as a superhuman mental state. And I'm a little bit skeptical of that. And personally, I think that first jhana especially was not anything really outrageous. I think it was just meditating properly with you still got like like a mental object going. Like if you're meditating on any kind of thought, maybe even meditating on Om, like a mantra or something, then if you've got that going in your mind, then that would be first jhana, it seems to me. That isn't orthodox, and so you can take it or leave it. But it does strike me as really strange the way the 4 jhanas have been defined as superhuman mental states, when originally, in my opinion, they were just the 4 stages of meditation, where first jhana, yeah, you still got the mental process going. Second jhana, you've got the mental process has stopped, and you've still got um, like physical and mental pleasure and displeasure. Then with third jhana, the mental pleasure and displeasure has stopped, but you're still capable of feeling physical pleasure and displeasure. Then when you get on to, let's see, third jhana, that's also considered to be a very highly advanced mindfulness state. And when you get to fourth jhana, which is defined as, or one of the definitions is purity of mindfulness, which again kind of, in a way, it kind of debunks the Vipassana people with regard to the unnecessary nature, presumably, of jhana. When you get to fourth jhana, then physical and mental pleasure and pain have stopped, and thinking has stopped, and you're essentially just sitting there empty. You're wide awake, you're fully conscious. It's purity of mindfulness. You're not like a hibernating squirrel, like a lot of people think fourth jhana is, where it's like a deep or a deep hypnotic state where your breathing almost stops and your heartbeat almost stops. And some people can do that. And to me, I think not being an adept at fourth jhana, I can't really say from my own personal experience. But if you are just oblivious to everything around you, and you're almost unconscious, then I really think it's more likely that you're in a deep hypnotic trance than in fourth jhana. Because fourth jhana is purity of mindfulness. You should be even more awake than ordinarily. It would be like a very advanced mystical state. And that is considered, this fourth jhana, like I was saying earlier, that's a lot of ancient Buddhist texts consider that to be like the jumping off point to nirvana. Not necessarily, but in a lot of cases that a monk gets to fourth jhana, and generally it's not that he just immediately becomes enlightened like while he's in fourth jhana, but he will attain fourth jhana and then come back to a more ordinary mental state, and then something will go through his mind like an insight that he has just attained the highest possible meditative state, and that's still not enlightenment, and therefore nothing you can really do, being like a volitional act, is going to cause enlightenment. You can't just cause enlightenment. Like Krishnamurti used to say, you can open the window, but you can't make the breeze blow in. So that kind of realization um, is perhaps most likely to occur in fourth jhana. Or another way of saying it is that when you're in fourth jhana, all distractions have stopped. And so you're much more likely to stop being beguiled by the flickering shadows on the walls of Plato's cave, because the shadows have been stopped, at least temporarily. And I might as well add that when the Buddha, according to the uh, Mahaparinibbana Sutta, Parinibbana, when he finally died, he died in the state of fourth jhana. So it does have a very high reputation. That's probably why it is the last step of the Noble Eightfold Path. And I guess I've gone through all 8, and I've kind of thrown in some heresies and that kind of thing. And so I guess we're done. It's kind of getting dark here anyway, and I'll be sitting here in the dark soon. So yeah, I guess that's good enough. And yeah, if you're not satisfied and you have questions, I can answer it in like a Q&A video. Another one's probably going to be coming up relatively soon. And if you have any questions with regard to Buddhist philosophy, or what it's like living in Burma, or asceticism, monasticism, that kind of thing, feel free to ask. And I do Q&A videos relatively regularly, on average about once every 2 weeks. And yeah, so be happy, and I guess we're done. So goodbye.